come way, way down. The challenge is that's where we introduced gluten. So this whole, you see a lot of comedians joke about, gluten and all that. But we never had it until the 50s. It was not in the other bread. So gluten literally is something to keep the wheat together. So if you have gluten-free stuff, it's usually pretty crumbly. But no one really looked at what does gluten do to humans. And there are people that are sensitive to gluten, so you've heard of that. They need to be on gluten-free. But they don't know about gliadin. Gliadin is another protein that's in the newer ones that actually could arguably be, to me, more dangerous than gluten because it hits the receptors in our brain similar to heroin, similar to morphine, to opiates. That's why people are literally addicted to their wheat, like their morning muffin. Like if they don't get their morning muffin, they're not nice to be around. And so you have to understand that there's food that affects us mentally. So you've all been to a restaurant where they give you free bread. Now, most of us, if not all of us, will not take candy from strangers, even though we know strangers have really good candy, and puppies. But we take bread from a waitress. Now, you guys are all nice, but they don't give it to you because they're nice. They're giving it to you to make you hungrier. If you eat bread, you actually spike your glucose, you spike your insulin, and then it crashes, you get hungry, you order more, they get a bigger tip. So understand that certain foods make you hungrier. Other foods, like the healthy fats, actually you can't eat that much butter or olive oil. And so that's where I wanted to at least talk about, is that there are things that you, especially with wheat, I would say 80 plus, if not more, of all the things in the grocery store have wheat in them, even like toothpaste and chapstick and stuff like that, just, I think, for the gliadin in it. And then, are we all addicted to sugar? I mean, we frankly all have a sweet tooth. And the challenge is that sugar is one of those things that has a dose response in terms of how much you can have, your body can take care of. So does anyone know how much blood we have in the body? Like
7 pints?
7 pints? 7 pints? 8 pints? Going once, going twice. It's kind of about 5 quarts, which is 10 pints. Yeah. So, and again, people, different body size, are a little different. But so we have 5 quarts of blood in our body. How much sugar is in those 5 quarts? To have a blood sugar of about 100 is, those of you that are diabetic know that's a good number. So how much sugar does it take to get a blood sugar of 100? It turns out it's only 1 teaspoon. So we only have 1 teaspoon rolling around our body. That's about what we can tolerate. But the food we have has, soda has 10. I mean, it's just amazing how much sugar we get in. If you have think of breakfast, which jokingly, Kellogg was the one that said breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But see, a lot of people would have, like, say, a cereal with toast and orange juice. I mean, that is just an amazing amount of sugar for our body to process, and then we send them to school. No, the teacher. My wife's a teacher. And the challenge with wheat that turns into sugar, because basically every carbohydrate turns into sugar, even fruits and vegetables, is it spikes insulin. So we've all been taught that calories count, and that that's the key, is to not eat very many calories and burn more calories. We all do our Fitbit and 10,000 steps and this and that. And that's never worked in 50 years because it's not about calories. Otherwise, we would just drink gasoline, because gasoline has, calorie is how much energy you can have in a food that will heat up water. So it really turns out it's hormones. So that's the big thinking right now, is that we need to really look at what is the stuff we put into our bodies, the things we do, affect our hormones, especially the hormone insulin, because insulin literally is a storage hormone. If you have high insulin, you're just going to put weight on. And in fact, we drug test sumo wrestlers for exogenous insulin, because they actually inject themselves with insulin so they can get fatter to be the best sumo person. So Now, in our medicine paradigm, we liked it when we had straightforward things. And Alexander Fleming invented penicillin. And those of you, again, that have gray hair, remember, like, you could use penicillin, you have strep throat, you just use penicillin, and it worked. So it's essentially one disease, one bullet. That was nice and neat. And this comes out of the book on Alzheimer's, and that was published just last year from UCLA. And the thought was that if you have a single plug, if you have just one hole in your roof, then that one bullet, one fix would work. But the challenge is with chronic disease, you have multiple holes. And in fact, with Alzheimer's, there's 30 holes in the brain. And so if you plug up one hole, yeah, that will help, but you won't notice it. You'll get just as wet because all the other problems. So it is going to take a little different thinking as opposed to one bullet per problem. And so the solution might be discovered by looking where people are successful. And so this is Mr. Brutner did a thing called the Blue Zones, and he went around the world looking where people live the longest. So it turns out close to here is Loma Linda. The Seventh-day Adventist lifestyle is quite good. Now they're vegetarian, but they also do a lot of other very, very good things that help them. They basically grow up and they're like, cradle to grave there. They all kind of stay together. They don't, if anyone here is Seventh-day Adventist, they don't have even caffeine. They just have a very good lifestyle. And then it goes all the way to like Okinawa, Japan is where women live the longest. But they're actually on a high-carb diet too, but it's but mostly like sweet potatoes and other things that they naturally get in not processed food. And then in Sardinia, Italy, is a high-fat diet. So, and that's what I've been exposed to. So there's a lot of different nutrition programs. So I'm the first to say I'm not tied to any one. I just think everyone has to figure out what's the best one for them. But interestingly, this was one of the things that he kind of came up with, that when you look at why they do so well, it starts off with the social aspects, kind of what you guys are doing now, that family first. So if you have a good family, you live longer. If you worship, frankly, anyone or anybody or anywhere, we're talking, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddha, by just going once a week to a service, you increase your lifespan by 14 years. And then if you have friends, if you're a loner, it's not good. Remember the Unabomber up in Montana with one cabin? It's not good not to be. That's why it's so good you guys are out on a dark and stormy night kind of thing to get together. 80% is the amount you should eat. We all overeat. So if there is a prayer, and I could never remember the prayer, it's like it's kind of like Kuda Matata, but it's a little bit better. But it's a prayer that they do in Okinawa that they pray before every meal to only eat 80%. That that you are going to overeat. You remember the Alka-Seltzer commercial? I can't believe I ate the whole thing. So you can just kind of be mindful when you eat and just say, hey, when I'm about 80% full, just stop. And there's this whole, like we have fast food. In Italy, they have slow food. Like it's funny when you go to get a table, they'll ask you like, can you be out in 2 hours? Because they're trying to hurry you in 2 hours. Because most people eat for hours and hours, but we don't. We eat quite quickly. But if you can stop and wait a little bit, you'll get full. But if you keep eating till you feel full, you'll be over full in about 10, 15 minutes. And then the plant slant really is just to stay away from processed foods. If you're so inclined, a little bit of wine. You want to know your purpose. You could downshift. And then I like the top part the most is that you don't exercise, you just move naturally. You literally want to trip over health. So that's one paradigm. So when I was in Ireland at a wedding and we were going to Italy, this book came out, and I've been waiting for it to come out, by this really good, because I have heart disease, by this Asim Mahatra. And so he came out with this book that talks about a place in Italy called Piapi. And so my wife's wonderful, and she allowed me to, when I went, we were flying from Ireland to Rome, that we hired we hired a driver to take us down to Piappi, and I got to meet the chef. And what I was going to show you, see if I can do this. So this is a movie about it, and we'll give you that, but let me just, this is the...
decades. Ansel Keys would become famous for his demonizing stance on saturated fat and cholesterol.
By the 1980s, he realized that some of those really weren't standing the test of time, and he couldn't get his papers published. And he was furious.
In Italy, in Campania region, in province of Salerno, in Cilento, in Pollica, we have a treasure.
The scientific evidence is very clear.
I think one of the key things of the Mediterranean diet is the variety of food.
So this is the chef, and so I met him, and then about 3 months later, with Ms. Levin's help, she's in the back there. Can you put your hand up? Yeah. So she's the one that helped me find my driver, Roberto. And so then I brought 2 patients there a couple months later, and we lived with him for a week and got to eat. He was a top chef on a, in the contest on a TV show there.
Adopting a lifestyle that involves a high.
And then the Mediterranean diet is a high-fat diet. This is where the museum is. So Ansel Keys actually lived here, and we got the Mediterranean diet wrong. You'll hear about that Mediterranean diet is so healthy, but it turns out the true Mediterranean diet is a high-fat diet, and that's the extra virgin olive oil.
Fat Mediterranean diets.
We use extra virgin olive oil. What nuts contain are fatty acids.
And another interesting thing is the oily fish.
Even